You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Your host tonight is the author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, the pan-African nationalist, Oni. Oni, what are we discussing tonight?
Peace on Cobia. We're going to have a conversation that we needed to have a long time ago. There are 4 words in the English language that, put together in a sentence, is the sentence that we as a people don't use, but should use if we're looking to move forward as a race. Before we get into that, the topic of discussion today is why I intend to include a certain Amos Wilson speech in my next book. Now, this next book is already promising to be phenomenal. It has speeches. Okay, it has speeches, it has passages. It's just rich. All right? And I really want to get it out there into the market. But of course, this comes back to the 4 words that you don't know how to use. Okay, they come back to the 4 words you don't know how to use it. And you'll see it, let's say after I do a little performance, if you will. But you'll see it after this Amos Wilson speech. And you'll see it after a little performance. But and you're not going to be thinking it. You know, and that's a tragic part. But first and foremost, you know, peace. I'm ending the 2-week trial for my class. It went really, really well. Not too many participants this time around. I'm hoping you can participate this next time around. But again, this is going to come back to the 4 words. It's going to come back to that one sentence you need to learn. But, you know, without giving it away, I'm going to say this class went really well. It was amazing. It's like the full course would be, let's say, 70 different daily lessons, if you will. And I don't want to say lessons. I want to say 70 different daily rich conversations. You know, the things that we've uncovered in this class are, let's just say, it's no surprise that, you know, white people don't like me. You know, it's no surprise. This class is something that you need to sign up for. Just listen to me. Listen to me on this. You need to sign up for this class. All right? But I really want to jump into this. I'm going to link you guys this Amos Wilson speech, right? And then following that, I want to, I'll describe it to you after the Amos Wilson speech.
Professor Amos Wilson and the psychology of self-hatred among global African people. Our topic is the psychology of self-hatred among global African people. Our guest, Professor Amos Wilson, professor of psychology at the New York Institute of Technology and also at the College of New Rochelle. He's also author of the book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. Professor Wilson, we had a guest who, or rather a caller just a few moments ago who raised an area with Skinner, I do believe.
Very, very important area. because the topic of what we call Skinnerian conditioning, instrumental conditioning, is a standard topic raised in psychology. The essence of Skinnerian conditioning, or sometimes SR psychology, particularly of Skinner's type, named after B.F. Skinner, Harvard professor, who didn't so much discover new principles as just codify ways of behaving and consequences that already existed. The essence of it is that behavior is controlled by its consequences. Okay. That behavior that brings good consequences tends to be repeated and increased in frequency and probability of occurrence. Behavior that's followed by negative consequences tend to be decreased or eliminated. And a very simple but very powerful principle, and that's really the essence of it. And conditioning involves, to a good extent, you see, manipulating reward and punishment in order to bring about particular changes in behavior, you see. And so it's a very, very important psychology that many black students are educated in and don't understand at all.
What's the twist on it in terms of self-hatred?
The twist is the essence of power. You see, at first, this psychology is often presented in terms of a rat. Okay? You put a rat in a box or in some condition, and if it behaves in a certain way, you give it something to eat, you give it something to drink. Okay? That's a reward. If it behaves in a way you don't want it to behave, you give it an electric shock, punish it, or don't give it food. So, of course, because it wants to eat, and of course you make sure you've starved it before you put it in to the system. So if it wants to eat and so forth, it eventually learns the relationship between certain behavior and certain consequences. So if by standing up on its two hind feet it gets fed, it will stand up on its two hind feet much more frequently than before the system was put into order, you see. So the rat is conditioned by living under those circumstances. The experimenter who has control of the rat, you see, can create certain behaviors or reinforce certain behaviors in the rat by determining which behaviors will be rewarded and which will be punished. Now, where black students are miseducated in these psychology classes is that often the lesson is left right there. Okay, and I use this experiment, as a matter of fact, to get people to understand the difference between equal education and a relevant education, of how a black student can be equally educated with a white student. They just learn the same thing and be made dumb by the same learning. Now, a black student and a white student can learn that principle in the same way, but it doesn't have the same effects. Because you can look at this relationship between the experimenter and this rat as a power relationship, as a political relationship, you see, which says this experimenter who has control of the rewards and punishments of this rat is able to create behavior in this rat as a result of having that power. You see, being that he has control over the rewards and punishment, he uses that control to condition the rat. And then when I move on from there, I ask my students then, who has control of the water that comes into your neighborhood? Who has control of the food, the control of the jobs, controls of the symbols of status, control of information, and we go on and on. Can't you see that you are the rat? You see, this is where you end when you're talking to black students. You don't end with the rat and the experimenter.
Right.
You see, and a black student who has not been taught that, who has not been taken to have that experiment moved out of its standard presentation into politics and into the reality of his life, is miseducated, even though he's learning the same thing that the white student learned, you see. And this is why I try to get across to the people. You must understand, having people learn the same thing a white student learned is not going to get you out of your condition. Now then, you have to look up on if you look up on the Harlems, the Bed-Stuys, even whole nations where blacks live in the world today, they are boxes. and we are rats in them. And when you see the IMF and the United States banks and the other European countries manipulating reward and punishment, selling weapons and creating wars and doing all of these kinds of things, you have in principle the same thing, you see. And just as that rat's behavior is being created by the manipulation of reward and punishment, the behavior and attitudes of black people are being created by the control of Europeans of rewards and punishment. This is the essence of power. The essence of power is the ability to selectively reward and punish what you want. Now, how does this relate to self-hatred? I hate to hold your people up, but I just want to, because this is a vital topic in psychology, and black students should deal with this topic very thoroughly because there's deep implication. When this is talked about, often the black student identifies himself with the experimenter, and the experimenter is a white man. And it's when you identify with him because he's a human being, and the other thing is a rat. But when you identify with that experimenter, you're misidentifying yourself. You see, when the white student identifies himself with the experimenter, his identity is closer to reality, you see. And so in learning the same thing, his racial position is reinforced, even though it appears that he's getting the same education, you see. And people must learn the difference between so-called equal education. Getting equal education for black students is not getting them to learn the same thing white students are learning. And we're going to have to understand this. So then just as that conditioning situation presented by Skinner is what we call a rat in the box, the nations where our people's lives are controlled through the manipulation of Europeans is what we can call a nigger box. It is where Africans are created into niggers as a result of the manipulation of reward and punishment by Europeans. We have to keep that in mind. How do you create self-hatred then? Certain of that rat's behavior is associated with reward, with pleasure, with good feelings, with security, with love, if you want to call it that, you see. So whenever he performs that, he moves toward that behavior, and he emits that behavior because it brings those rewards. Or he emits that behavior because it helps him to escape from pain, from hunger, from fear, from insecurity. You see, and that's another method used in these Skinner boxes, you see, of where if we don't reward the animal, we permit him to escape pain. Okay, now then, let's... All right, now, just one other thing.
I saw echoes of slavery in my mind on that.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and this is going to go back now to drug behavior and everything else that we'll get to, later on. Now, self-hatred, and this goes back to the first statement I made as one of the first methods that's used to breed self-hatred. Remember, the association of innate and personal and group characteristics with negative feelings and so forth. So then, how do you create self-hatred? You make everything that you innately are negative and painful. So that being black is made to be painful. Being African is made to be painful, you see. Identifying yourself as an African means you don't get rewarded. It means you go hungry. It means you don't get accepted, you see. And so by stacking all of these negatives onto African characteristics, it motivates the African to escape his characteristics and seek relief through that escape.
There's something that came up that is just such a graphic illustration of what you're saying in an advertising campaign that never made Madison Avenue. A friend of mine was involved in this, and I don't know what the final rejection was based on, but this was in the 60s. And it was for an aspirin. And it said it was going to be positioned in the subways as, this is what you need for the black ache. So, and I mean, it was like, when the whole deal and the whole experience of being black is just too much. Take this for the black ache.
And believe me, we move toward pain relievers, which is, of course, why you look at the drugs, and these fundamentally are pain relievers. But let's not only talk about drugs. We're going to talk later on about sexual addictions, love, what we call love in our community, and other kinds of behaviors that are relievers of pain. One other statement, because the caller here mentioned something very, very, very rich and fundamental. This self-hatred also is related to this Skinner paradigm. You see, this is how you take knowledge in books and you Africanize it by seeing how it applies and can be used to your own interest.
Yes.
You see,
yes.
and so, but I'll speak about that later on. I just want to. Oh, you got it.
But let's get to the calls. One more. Go ahead. One more.
Because this relates.
These people are gonna kill me now.
Yes.
Go ahead.
But this relates to the second principle I wanted to mention. That produces self-hatred, and that is to actually create the negative characteristics in the individual group via what I call the self-fulfilling vicious cycle, created incompetences and the creation of subcultures, but through the use of this Skinnerian conditioning, create the actual characteristics that you will come to hate later on, and that the individual will come to hate in and of himself. So in other words, the black man, as we see him today, is a created person. Okay. And he's an
environmentally created person.
Yes, he is conditioned. You see, one of the reasons why you want to remove European power is that you want by removing that power, you also remove his ability to create you. And by gaining that power yourself, you move into the ability to be self-creating.
WLIB, I'm Gary Bird. You're on the air with Professor Amos Wilson.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace Seeker. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, and we need power. Power will not be handed to us. We need to build power. But in order to build power, we need a power blueprint. You need to study the best blueprints available. You have Garveys. You have Wilsons. You have Williams. You have mine. Now, you'll have Cooks. Carlos A. Cooks was Garvey's best student. The greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966. Yes, the greatest. Yet Whitey doesn't want you to read his blueprint. Cook's blueprint isn't religious. Cook's isn't for integration. Cook's isn't for communism. Cook's isn't even for anti-blacks. Cook's blueprint is for Africa. And Cook's blueprint is the unknown blueprint that was the basis of black power as we know it today. When you say buy black, you're talking about Cooks. When you say black is beautiful, you're talking about Cooks. When you say Malcolm got something right, you're talking about Cooks. But Cook's blueprint was lost. And Whitey is hiding that blueprint behind a $1,000 paywall. He's hiding solutions from you, telling you you need to take out a small loan to get the information that can liberate you. Whitey does not want you to have solutions to your problems, but you need solutions. You need power. I will give you the Carlos A. Cooks Reader, valued over $1,000 at a 98% discount, $15. Send $15 to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and I'll send you the ebook. We need power. You need blueprints. Start building today.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
So you just heard Amos Wilson, and you already know that was amazing, right? It was inspiring, but you also see there were some things that, although more authentic, you notice that there is, certain fillers that Amos Wilson may use. There was, of course, Gary Bird, talking and interrupting, if you will. Speaking of whoever was going to, whatever caller was going to call, so on and so forth. And even in, like, say, my speech right now, you can hear me say, And these are things that, actually, let me just show you what I mean, right? So I wrote up the transcript for this. Now, unfortunately, I didn't know there was an easier way, although it's not a foolproof way, but there's an easier way. So I wrote up a transcript, and then of course I edited it, and here's what it looks like, sounds like, and just bear in mind while you listen to this that if this is put into a book, young black people who purchase this book, or who you purchase the book for, right, have this speech at their hand. So not only can they speak it, but not only can they read it, they can speak it, And this is a different class altogether, because they can possibly hear it from Amos Wilson. You never know, YouTube could take the video down, right? Or wherever it can take the video down, the audio down, and then, it becomes another, search for this video or for this audio. But here, when they have it in a book, as long as the book's in your library or their library, they can read it anywhere, anytime. No one can take that away from them. Now, of course, books are not forever or whatever, but for the most part, once they have the book, they have the book. I can show you books from, I had like 20 years ago, right? I couldn't tell you, let's say, all the lectures that I've listened to off the top of my head. I can think back to where they are, what they are, but I couldn't necessarily tell you or find it for you, and sometimes they're removed and they're, all that nonsense. So here's the speech as read by me, and of course I'm not going to put too much energy into it, but here's a speech that's read by me, and you can just see what I'm saying about this is something that you can have in your child's hand, right? So the title it, how do you create self-hatred, right? And so we started off. Skinnerian conditioning is named after B.F. Skinner, a Harvard professor who didn't discover new principles, but only codified ways of behaving and consequences that already existed. The essence of it is that behavior is controlled by its consequences. Behaviors that bring good consequences tend to be repeated and increased in frequency and probability of occurrence. Behaviors followed by negative consequences tend to be decreased or eliminated. A very simple but very powerful principle, and that's really the essence of it. Conditioning involves, to a good extent, manipulating reward and punishment in order to bring about particular changes in behavior. It's a very, very important psychology that many black students are educated in and don't understand at all. This psychology is often presented in terms of a rat. You put a rat in a box or in some condition, and if it behaves in a certain way, you give it something to eat or something to drink. That's a reward. If it behaves in a certain way you don't want it to behave, you give it an electric shock, punish it, or don't give it food. Of course, you make sure you starved it before you put it into the system. So if it wants to eat and so forth, it eventually learns that relationship between certain behavior and certain consequences. So if by standing up on its two hind feet it gets fed, it will stand up on its two hind feet much more frequently than before this system was put into order. So the rat is conditioned by living under those circumstances. The experimenter has control of the rat and creates certain behaviors or reinforces certain behaviors in the rat by determining which behaviors would be rewarded and which would be punished. Now, where black students are miseducated in these psychology classes is that often the lesson is left right there. I use this experiment to get people to understand the difference between equal education and a relevant education, and how a black student can be equally educated with a white student and learn the same thing and be made dumb by the same learning. Now, a black student and a white student can learn in principle in the same way, but it doesn't have the same effects. Because you can look at this relationship between the experimenter and this rat as a power relationship or as a political relationship. This experimenter who has controlled the rewards and punishments of this rat is able to create behavior in this rat as a result of having that power. Being that he has control over the rewards and punishments, he uses the control to condition the rat. When I move on from there, I ask my students, who has control of the water that comes into your neighborhood? Who has control of the food? Control of the jobs, control of the symbols of status, control of information, and we go on and on. Can't you see that you are the rat? This is where you end when you are talking to black students. You don't end with the rat and the experimenter. The black student who has not been taught that and who has not had that experiment moved out of its standard presentation into politics and into the reality of his life is miseducated, even though he is learning the same thing that the white student learns. This is why I tried to get across to people that you must understand having our people learn the same thing white students learn is not going to get you out of your condition. If you look up the Harlems, the Bed-Stuys, even whole nations where blacks live in the world today, they are boxes and we are rats in them. When you see the IMF and the United States Bank and the other European countries manipulating reward and punishment, selling weapons and creating wars and doing all these kinds of things, you have in principle the same thing. And just as that rat's behavior is being created by the manipulation of reward and punishment, the behaviors and attitudes of black people are being created by the control of Europeans of reward and punishment. This is the essence of power. The essence of power is the ability to selectively reward and punish what you want. This relates to self-hatred. This is a vital topic in psychology, and black students should deal with this topic very thoroughly because there are deep implications. When this is talked about, often the black student identifies with the experimenter, and the experimenter is a white man. You identify with him because he's a human being and the other thing is a rat. But when you identify with that experimenter, you are misidentifying yourself. When the white student identifies himself with the experimenter, his identity is closer to the reality. In learning the same thing, his racial position is reinforced, even though it appears that he's getting the same education, and people must learn the difference between so-called equal education and relevant education. Getting equal education for black students is not getting them to learn the same thing white students are learning. We're going to have to understand this. Just as that conditioning situation presented by Skinner is what we call a rat in a box, the nations where our people's lives are controlled through the manipulation of Europeans, what we can call an Askari box. It is where Africans are created into Askari as a result of the manipulation of reward and punishment by Europeans. We have to keep that in mind. How do you create self-hatred then? Some of that rat's behavior is associated with reward, with pleasure, with good feelings, with security, with love, if you want to call it that. So whenever he performs that behavior, he moves toward that behavior, and he emits that behavior because it brings those rewards, or he emits that behavior because it helps him to escape from pain, from hunger, from fear, from insecurity. And that's another method used in those Skinner boxes. We don't reward the animal. We permit him to escape pain. This can relate to slavery, drug behavior, and so on. One of the first methods to breed self-hatred is the association of innate, personal, and group characteristics with negative feelings and so forth. So how do you create self-hatred? You make everything you innately are negative and painful, so that being black is made to be painful, being African is made to be painful. Identifying yourself as an African means you don't get rewarded, means you go hungry, means you don't get accepted. So by stacking all these negatives onto African characteristics, it motivates the African to escape his characteristics and seek relief through that escape. We move toward pain relievers. Drugs are fundamentally pain relievers. But let's not only talk about drugs. We can talk about sexual addiction, what we call love, and other kinds of behaviors that are relievers of pain. We need to take knowledge in books and Africanize it by seeing how it applies and can be used in our own interest. This relates to the second principle I wanted to mention that produces self-hatred and creates the negative characteristics in the individual group. What I call the self-fulfilling vicious cycle, created incompetences, and the creation of subcultures. These, through the use of this Skinnerian conditioning, create the actual characteristics that you will come to hate later on, and that the individual will come to hate in and of himself. In other words, the black man as we see him today is a created person. One of the reasons why you want to remove European power is by removing that power, you also remove his ability to create you. And by gaining that power yourself, you move into the ability to be self-creating. So, yeah, I know I could have read that with much more passion. I didn't. I say this to say that right there is written out for our people. I took out the N-word, obviously, but you can see why. You can see why I would like this in the next book. Because now you have young people able to practice speaking, not by using, let's say, Wazungu examples, right? But by actually using our own examples, our own luminaries, our own master speakers. And of course, there are more. There's Garvey, there's, Delaney, there's, so on and so forth. I don't want to give away too much because obviously white boy doesn't want me to print this, right? He doesn't want me to publish this. And, I shouldn't be giving him any reasons to not want me to publish this. But there's also another thing to it, and that is, what happened when Dr. Clark admitted that he was going to write a book. Now, I might even include this one. I don't know. I'm not really too I'm not too attached to this one. But listen to this right here.
And I have studied it down through the ages. But I have always threatened to write a massive book about it and never wrote a line. I write out the title for the book. And I talk out chapters in the book. But I never write the book. it is so delicate and dangerous, and so painful, that a person like me, who opened many doors and talked about many things, even at the risk of being killed, hadn't even put it down. The book is called The Role of the Bastard as a Factor in History. How people have bastardized other people through their women and used the bastard to control them. And having used the bastard, refused to accept the bastard in the home of the father that created him and send him back to his mother's people to start confusion.
Yes, like the book. Yes.
When and if I dared, and somebody going to have to give me a bodyguard 24 hours a day if I ever did.
Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings. Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Black people face one problem: the problem of ignorance. This is why those who opposed us stole us from our parents, disconnected us from our continent, and enforced on us illiteracy. But now the ignorance is self-inflicted. We send our children to their machines. We detach ourselves from our motherland, and we don't read meaningful literature. Consciousness is a series of stages. The sooner we get to one, the sooner we are ready for the higher. The Pro-Black Compendium accelerates the beginner to the advanced and provides for the advanced an unparalleled breadth. This is the sort of book your enemies do not want you to read, but our ancestors would insist you read twice.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
So you heard him say he never wrote a line of this book, right? He never wrote a line of the book that he was looking to write, you know, the role of the bastard as a factor in history, right? What you did hear also was that people applauded. Now, he also said someone would need to give him a bodyguard for 24 hours, 24/7. And he was joking. And the thing is that I can't even joke like that, because I know if you did not protect Dr. Clark, you're not going to protect me. If you didn't protect John Henry Clark, you're not going to protect me. You understand?
if John Henry Clark could tell you that he's going to write some good book, and all you can do is applaud, retweet, whatever, you're not doing what you need to do. Okay, you're not doing what you need to do. One time somebody pointed out to me somebody pointed out one time, let's say one person was discussing, oh man, these mulattoes be messing up, mulattoes be tripping, whatever, right? And then they said they cited as proof, Dr. Clark was going to write a book about mulattoes, right? Ergo mulattoes are tripping, right? And someone else pointed out, Dr. Clark never wrote the book. You can't use the title of the book as a reference. You have to use the book, the content in the book, as the reference. There's no book. There's no book. But meanwhile, you're laughing. You're laughing. You're saying, man, he needs to write this book. Oh, that's hilarious. I can't believe he said that. He needs a bodyguard. Oh man, he's hilarious. I can't believe he said that. Right? Not realizing that you had a part to play in the creation of this book and you didn't play your part. Dr. Clark died before even writing a page for that book. If that were the case. I don't know if he wrote a line eventually, but the reality is that there's no book called The Role of the Bastard as a Factor in History. I mean, maybe I should have double checked before, but all the same, there's no book, right? And we don't even realize that. Like I can tell you personally that the first death threat I got, right? Listen to this. The first death threat I got was from some black man in Harlem. So he's not even too far from me. Not even too far from me. I was selling at the time on my website. I wanted to sell like a poetry book. Right? Just a poetry book, non-essential. It's not as essential as Pro-Black Compendium. It's just certain poems and articles, prose and prosaic, right? No, prose and poetry, right? Anyway, I'm offering to, sell this book because I'm like, hey, this website, takes a lot out of me. Maybe just a little bit of compensation. And you get a little entertainment on the side, would be nice. Dude threatens me. He's like, I'm going to kill you anytime I see you because you're looking for fiat cash. You're looking for fiat money. Ergo, I'm going to kill you. Because, I think he was insisting that I send him a free copy of the poetry because he doesn't mess with money. Somehow he doesn't mess with money. Don't understand how you're typing to me and you don't mess with money. I mean, I guess you could probably, do that stuff in the library. I'm guessing. I mean, there's a way, maybe, possibly. But, actually, no, the dude's in Harlem. I don't see how he doesn't use any money. It was more like, it's not that he didn't have money, it's that he didn't have money for me. You get what I'm saying? And because he didn't have money for me, he had a bullet for me, apparently. You know what I mean? Like, he was really bent on finding a way to kill me. Like, verily. And like I said, I'm not even gonna joke about y'all gonna give me a bodyguard, because I know you're not. And really, that's one of the troubles with us as a people. Because, like I said, I'm not gonna say, hey, give me a bodyguard. But the thing is that when Dr. Clark said he was gonna, because I'm telling you what I intend to do with my book, right? That should tell you enough, right? But the thing with you is that you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna applaud this, I'm gonna retweet this, I'm gonna say some kind words like keep it up, But you're not thinking donate, you're not thinking purchase, you're not thinking review. You're not saying, hey, you know what? If Oni's gonna write another good book, I'm going to purchase a book from him, just to, keep him encouraged, let him know that his books are appreciated. I'm not going to do that for him. I'm not going to drop a review for his books because that would make him think that he should keep writing. You know? That should make him think, hey, you know what? Keep doing what you're doing. You know, no, I'm just going to tell him, you know, congratulate. I'm going to tell him, good idea. You know, just like what you did with Dr. Clark. You said, you know, Dr. Clark said, look, I got this book idea. And what did you give him to get the book idea? Nothing. Nothing. I'll just finish that sentence. Nothing. You know? You're supposed to be sending him donations. You're supposed to be purchasing his other books. You're supposed to be reviewing his other books. You know? You're not even doing that. And that's really the shame of it all. You know, I'm actually about to check. No, I shouldn't check that. But that's where we're at as a people. Now, what I want to say is that this book, because I'm transcribing speeches, right? You know, like I said, you know, I did the hard way the first time around, you know? So when I did this Amos Wilson speech I just read, you know, it took me a couple of hours to write every word he was saying and format it and so on and so forth, right? Especially since sometimes, you know, some of these words were blurry, some of these words were, you know, should I even include it? So it took me a few hours. I learned a different method, which was, you know, well, I shouldn't even say the method, but through a little bit of coding, I was able to get to get a working transcription, an easier template for a transcription. And of course, I still need to edit it a lot, you know, add periods and commas and so on and so forth, and correct misspelled words and yada yada. In fact, I could show you what a raw. This is somebody else. This is actually well, I shouldn't even say who it is, but this is somebody else, and you can probably hear from this how jumbled up it is. I'll try to get some sleep, and then I get a call from Bill Jones, who assists the cat for us. And first Bill aligns, did you read so its own look at someone's own brother small? Now we'll call each other up to 2 o'clock in the morning if we see something interesting. Overreading something I'm doing is the fast track up there. There's an explosion of information about us and the world. You know, and actually that's not even the full transcript. The full transcript is 00. I'll try to get some sleep, and then I 0001 get a call from Bill Jones, who assists 0003. The cat for us in first Bill line 0005. Did you read? You know what I'm saying? So I have to edit that out, obviously, among other things. So it's really, you know, and like I said, I found a way to code it out, which is really helpful. But again, you know, that's labor, that's work. So the thing that I'm saying is, you know, and I guess I'm going to keep it short. If you know, the words that you don't know is how can I help? The 4 words that you don't know is how can I help? And that's what you're supposed to hear whenever you hear somebody announce that they're going to do something good for you or your people. You know, you're supposed to say to yourself, how can I help? You know, Dr. Clark says, or John Henry Clark says, I'm going to write this book. You're supposed to say, how can I help? Not just applaud. You don't even have to applaud. You just show up after the lecture and say, hey, brother, how can I help? When Oni says, hey, look, I'm going to write this book, you're supposed to say, how can I help? And there are ways to help. I'm telling you. You can review the books I already have. I don't know why you're not even doing that, right? You can purchase the books I already have. Don't know why you're not doing that. You can donate to my Cash App. Again, don't know why you're not doing that. You can contact me about this class coming up, because this class is really, I mean, this is really a project I really want to work on. So definitely contact me about that. Again, don't know why you're not doing that. Now, if you want to go back into like literally helping with the book, you can help transcribe and edit the different speeches that I'm looking to include. Now, I kind of did a lot of them already, but again, if you want to help out with that, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to. So those are the 4 words. 4-word sentence that you need to learn right now. How can I help? Replace and another thing I want to say is that I intend to replace in this I'm gonna write in this book a speech that says, replace the phrase "wake up," right, with "how can I help?" Because what you're doing, and I might not necessarily have the speech, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that you tend to say "wake up" more than you say "how can I help?" You tend to complain about people more than you help people. More than you cooperate with people. And that right there is a big no. So in the meantime, how can I help? That's all you want. That's all. Just ask me, how can I help? And like I said, get the Pro-Black Compendium, get Zuberi, put down some reviews, make it the bestseller on Amazon. Make it the bestseller. Make it, I want to be in the top 30. The top 30. That's what I want to do. I want to be the top 30 for these books. And this next book's coming. These next books coming are going to be phenomenal. I'm letting you know this right now. They're going to be phenomenal. So definitely let me know if you're interested in helping out, and if you are, much appreciated. But until next week, if I can make it next week, a Bibi Fahodie.
Thank you for listening. I invite you to join hands with your brothers and sisters as we recite the African affirmation together. It's a call and response, so follow my lead. We are an African people, robbed from our homeland, robbed of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, our selfhood, our nationhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.